Why would you need, they told me I would need a power booster on my antenna probably, even though the digital is in the tuner or I put the converter box on, I would still need a power booster on my antenna.
Well, are you missing some of the channels in digital than you used to get in analog? Or do you know if you're missing certain channels?
No, I
that you
don't
used
watch TV that much.
Well, again, the biggest problem that we're going to have for folks, especially on the fringes of areas, is that they've had this antenna for a while, and in digital, the antenna isn't good enough anymore. They're going to need to upgrade their antenna. We have a website called antennaweb.org. If you go to antennaweb.org, you put in your zip code, similar to dtv.gov, it shows you which channels you should be receiving at your address, but it also highlights which antenna type you're going to need, whether it needs to be an amplified antenna, and these are for outdoor antennas, antennaweb.org. And the simple rule with antennas is the higher it is and the more outside the house it is, the better reception you're going to get. There are a number of different antennas now, and they're not, you may think that you need this huge antenna on your roof. There are a lot of smaller ones now, even outdoor ones that look like picture frames, and if it's outside the house, you get much better reception. With digital reception is a lot more influenced by terrain and obstacles than analog is. So that's why there's an issue with some folks that are in mountainous areas that may have more trouble with digital picking it up than they did with analog, and that is going to necessitate a better antenna. So when the transition happens, they're missing a channel, they may need to upgrade their antenna. In some cases, they may have had just a VHF point. Does everybody know what VHF and UHF, what we're talking about? So VHF covers channels 2 through 13, UHF is 14 to 51. So you have some stations that, again, that have been in VHF since the 1950s. In digital, they're on UHF. So for folks that have only had a VHF antenna, they're going to need either a UHF antenna or they're going to need a combination VHF, UHF antenna in the future. I know there's a lot of issues here, and I feel bad I'm jumping around. You have a question?
Yeah, Gordon Gibson, Connecticut. You just made the comment that with digital, it's more influenced by obstructions in the path.
Yes.
What's going to happen, and this has been a property rights right-of-way issue with regard to other telecommunications over the years. If you have a line of sight transmission and somebody builds a large building in the way.
Well, that's a good question. Well, again, we obviously recommend to folks that need better reception that a rooftop antenna is going to work the best. I would think that an obstruction or another building wouldn't affect an antenna that's on the roof. So that would be the recommendation there as far as dealing with something like that. I've heard of a number of different cases where folks couldn't get any reception, and this one gentleman called. He had a mirror behind his TV, and in digital it was, because the signal was something involving the mirror, it was having an effect on his reception. So you have little things like that. Frankly, it's really.
You move the mirror to better reception?
Yeah. In digital is so sensitive that a person that has a TV set up in the living room and has an antenna in there, if they move the antenna to another room in their house, all of a sudden they might get a channel that they weren't receiving in another room in the house. It's really, it calls for a lot of trial and error for some folks. Again, if you live in the city, relatively close to the TV station, you're not going to really have a big problem. However, as you get further away, that's when you're going to have some issues, and then the terrain issue is also a factor too. So there are. I'm just highlighting one station here. This is the NBC station in Syracuse. So they had about 1.1 million people that were receiving the analog signal over the air. In digital, the population would be 1.27 million. So the number of folks having access to the digital signal would be even greater, like what we saw on that map with the two lines around. So you have some folks getting it. However, the analog population 56,000 people that were receiving it in analog would not be able to receive it in digital. So they had a net gain of about 100,000 people. However, there's just a trade-off between folks that all of a sudden could get it in digital and then some folks that couldn't get it in analog. So that's just going to be the case with stations around the country, where there's just going to be just some differences in the way that the signal covered in analog versus digital. Any other questions about? Yeah.
Yeah, I got one.
Sure.
Since about 2005, we were taught that the digital transition was going to occur on February 17th, 2009.
Yes.
And in its wisdom, Congress decided that it wanted to delay the final conversion date until June 12th, 2009. With the best of the intelligence available from the folks at NAB and working with our friends in Congress, do we really believe we're really serious this time? Or for those people who are saying, I don't really need to worry because Congress is going to step in again and give me another 3 months and they'll just pass another law and I don't have to worry about that right now. Are we really serious, or is Congress going to intervene?
Serious. Double serious.
Double serious.
Surprise on June the 13th when you don't have any TV.
Well, you know, that what we've heard, you know, everybody's on board with June 12th. Congressional people on the Hill, Rick Boucher heads up the House committee overseeing DTV, has said that, you know, the date, this is it, no more delays. And I think what we've seen as far as survey data is that we're down to somewhere between 2 and 3 million households that are completely unready for the digital transmission. Well, when you factor in, you know, going in, we're over somehow 18 million folks that are strictly over the air, and we're down to about 2 million that are completely unready. So, you know, we made complete, you know, a tremendous amount of progress over the past few months. And as far as awareness, we're close to near universal awareness. Everybody knows that there's this transition coming. They've heard something, they've seen the commercials on the news or on their TV station. Every TV station between now and June 12th has to run a half-hour program between 8 a.m. and 11:35 at night, talking about how to hook up a converter box, getting the right antenna, rescanning your converter box. So there's a tremendous amount of information out there. If you haven't heard anything about it, you probably haven't been watching television.
Is that 12 a.m.? Is that when they're going to turn it over? I mean,
On June 12th?
Yeah.
Well, since they moved the date, the legislation allowed stations to decide which time of day that they wanted to turn it off.
Oh, okay.
So you have 900 stations roughly across the country that are going to be turning off analog that day. Some are going to be doing it in the overnight hours at 3 in the morning, June 12th. Some are going to be doing it during the daytime hours, and some are going to be doing it at night at 11:59 p.m. If you're really curious and want to find out, at dtv.gov, down the right-hand side of the screen, there's a Excel chart that has a whole master list of all the full power stations across the country. And you can go down the list and there's a column where it's coded, it says EV for early evening or EM for early morning. So every station had to, when they told the FCC what their plans were, they had to select a 6-hour block during that June 12th date. So stations are going to be turning it off at different points during the day on June 12th. So not everybody, not at 11:59, but during different parts of the day. And, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead if you want to finish.
So what's important too